Michelle Carter. In the summer of 2014, an 18-year-old boy sat alone in his pickup truck in a Kmart parking lot in Fairhaven, Massachusetts. He had attached a hose to a generator, filling the cab with carbon monoxide. At some point during the process, he became frightened and stepped out of the vehicle. His girlfriend was on the phone with him, and instead of telling him to come home, instead of calling for help, she told him to get back in. Conrad Henri Roy III was born September 12, 1995, in Mattapoisett, Massachusetts. He graduated from Old Rochester Regional High School with a 3.88 GPA, played baseball, crew, and track, and had earned his captain's license from Northeast Maritime Institute. He had been accepted to Fitchburg State University to study business. Conrad had struggled with social anxiety and depression for years. In October of 2012, following his parents' divorce, he had attempted to take his own life through an overdose. Court documents later revealed a troubled family environment, with allegations of physical abuse by his father and verbal abuse by his grandfather. He was a young man fighting internal battles that few people fully understood. Michelle Diana Carter was born August 11, 1996, from Plainville, Massachusetts. She and Conrad met in Florida in 2012 while both were visiting relatives. Despite living roughly 50 miles apart in Massachusetts, they saw each other in person only about 5 times over 2 years. Their relationship existed almost entirely through text messages and emails. Thousands of them. Both experienced mental health challenges. Carter was prescribed Celexa for anxiety and depression and had been admitted to McLean Hospital, a psychiatric facility, in June of 2014. In the early days of their relationship, Carter actively discouraged Conrad from self-harm. She urged him to seek professional help. She seemed to genuinely care about his well-being. But by mid-2014, her tone shifted dramatically. By July, she began insisting Conrad follow through on his plan to end his life. In the days before July 12th, she sent texts telling him there would be no more pushing it off, no more waiting. She told him he just needed to do it. On July 12, 2014, Conrad drove his pickup truck to a Kmart parking lot in Fairhaven. He attached a water pump hose to a generator in the bed of his truck and ran it through a rear window. During the process, Conrad became frightened and exited the vehicle. He called Carter. He was scared. He was having second thoughts. And in what would become the pivotal moment of the entire case, she told him to get back in. Conrad re-entered the vehicle. Carter remained on the phone with him for approximately 20 minutes as he lost consciousness. She did not call 911. She did not call his family. She did not call anyone who could have intervened. Conrad's body was discovered the next day. Afterward, Carter texted his mother asking if she had heard from Conrad. She already knew he was gone. The death was initially treated as a straightforward suicide, but the investigation shifted course when police obtained Conrad's cell phone and discovered the text exchanges with Carter. The digital trail, thousands of messages documenting escalating pressure, transformed a suicide investigation into a criminal case. There was no physical weapon. There was no DNA evidence, only a trail of text messages. How do you prosecute someone for words alone? On February 4th, 2015, a grand jury indicted Carter. She was arraigned the next day in New Bedford Juvenile Court on a charge of involuntary manslaughter. Carter, 17 at the time of the crime, was charged as a youthful offender, meaning she could be sentenced as an adult. The case was handled in Bristol County, Massachusetts. Carter waived her right to a jury trial. The bench trial began June 5, 2017, before Judge Lawrence Moniz in Bristol County Juvenile Court. The prosecution argued that Carter assisted, devised, advised, and planned his suicide, and that her phone instruction to get back in the truck constituted a criminal act. The defense argued Conrad caused his own death, and that Carter's own mental illness and medication influenced her behavior. Key evidence included thousands of text messages, Carter's confession to a friend that she had told him to get back in, phone records showing Carter was on the call at the time of death, and videos Conrad had recorded discussing his depression. On June 16, 2017, Judge Moniz found Carter guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The ruling hinged on the phone call. Carter's instruction for Conrad to re-enter the truck broke what the judge called the chain of self-causation. The judge stated that Carter instructed Conrad to get back into the truck, well knowing of all of the feelings he had exchanged with her, his ambiguities, his fears, his concerns. On August 3, 2017, Carter was sentenced to 2.5 years total, with 15 months to be served and the balance suspended, followed by 5 years of probation. Conditions included mental health evaluations, no contact with the Roy family, and a prohibition on profiting from her story. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court upheld the conviction on February 6, 2019. Carter began serving her 15-month sentence on February 11, 2019, at Bristol County House of Correction. A parole hearing in September of 2019 resulted in a denial. The United States Supreme Court declined to hear the case in January of 2020, leaving the conviction permanently in place. Carter was released on January 23, 2020, after serving 11 months and 12 days, earning early release for good behavior as a model inmate. Her 5-year probation ended on August 1, 2022. Michelle Carter is now 29 years old, free, and subject to no legal restrictions. She has maintained an extremely low profile since release and has made no public statements. Her attorney stated she is remorseful over the situation. It has been speculated she may have changed her name. The case set a significant legal precedent, demonstrating that verbal or textual encouragement could constitute a criminal act, and inspired proposed legislation known as Conrad's Law that would make coerced suicide a felony in Massachusetts. Carter took a life without ever laying a hand on anyone. But the next case involves a girlfriend who claimed the exact opposite, that violence happened by accident, even as surveillance footage told a different story. Jahara Malik. 5 days before Christmas in 2024, a 17-year-old girl went shopping with a friend. Before leaving, she looked for the pepper spray she typically carried, but could not find it. So she took a knife instead. By the end of that night, her boyfriend would be gone, and she would be standing in a parking garage insisting it was all an accident. Yakem Lawler, known to friends and family as Kamo, was 17 years old, a junior at Miami Northwestern Senior High School, and a running back on the school's football team. He lived in the Liberty City neighborhood of Miami and dreamed of a career in finance. Community advocates described him as a peaceful young man and more than just a football player. He was a critical part of the community. Jahara Malik, also 17 and a junior at Miami Northwestern, was Lawler's girlfriend, or by some accounts, his ex-girlfriend. The relationship had become strained. Lawler's mother later stated that Malik took her son's life because he was honest with her that he did not want to be with her. And she, not realizing her actions, her behavior, and her entitlement, is the reason why he did not want to be with her. This suggests the relationship was ending or had recently ended. On December 20th, 2024, Malik went shopping with a friend. Before leaving, she looked for pepper spray she typically carried, but could not find it. She took a knife instead. After shopping, she went to meet Lawler at his apartment complex in the 6100 block of Northwest 6th Court in Miami. They met in the third-floor parking garage. Malik told police they were horseplaying and the stabbing was accidental. But surveillance video captured Malik dropping the knife in the garage afterward. She called 911 and stayed at the scene to render first aid. Police responded around 11 p.m. Lawler was transported to the hospital, where he passed away. The medical examiner ruled the manner of death a homicide. Despite being identified at the scene, charges were not immediately filed. The Lawler family organized protests outside the Miami-Dade State Attorney's office demanding accountability. Weeks passed with no arrest. On January 28, 2025, over 5 weeks after the incident, Jahara Malik was taken into custody at a juvenile assessment center. 3 days later, she was transferred to adult criminal court under Florida's direct filing statute and charged as an adult with manslaughter and carrying a concealed weapon. What does it mean when someone calls for help but has already made a choice that cannot be undone? Malik entered a not guilty plea at her initial court appearance. Bond was set at $50,000 with GPS ankle monitoring. At a February 6, 2025 hearing, Judge Christine Hernandez placed Malik on total lockdown house arrest. She was allowed to leave only for school and attorney meetings. Prosecutors presented surveillance video of a prior school fight and evidence that Malik was known to carry a knife and had sent texts discussing harming others. The case experienced multiple delays throughout 2025, with the victim's family accusing the defense of stalling. On March 16, 2026, at the Richard E. Gerstein Justice Building in downtown Miami, Jahara Malik pleaded guilty to manslaughter with a deadly weapon and carrying a concealed weapon. The plea was not part of a deal. Sentencing is entirely at the judge's discretion. Defense attorney Larry Handfield stated that she wanted to accept responsibility, even though this was unintended consequences of both their actions. Judge Hernandez informed Malik the sentencing range spans from a youth offender sentence, which could mean probation to 4 years, up to 30 years in prison. As of April 5, 2026, Malik, now 18, is awaiting sentencing, scheduled for May 5, 2026. The victim's family is seeking the maximum 30-year sentence. Natalie John, Lawler's mother, stated that it took a year, 2 months, and 26 days for her to acknowledge or even hold accountability for what she did to her son. Malik's case hinges on a single question of intent. Did she mean to do what she did? But the next case leaves no room for that question at all. Because in Marion County, Florida, a 15-year-old girl did not simply act in a moment of anger. She helped plan an ambush, lured her ex-boyfriend into a trap, and watched as 5 others carried out what a judge would later call the most despicable crime he had ever seen. Amber Wright. In April of 2011, a 15-year-old boy received a text message from his ex-girlfriend saying she wanted to get back together. He was suspicious. He even texted her saying that if she had him jumped, he would never give her the time of day again. She responded that she could never do that to him. She just wanted them back together. So he went to meet her. He never came home. Seth Tyler Jackson was born February 3, 1996. He was a 15-year-old student at Bellevue High School in Bellevue, Florida. He aspired to become a UFC fighter. He had 2 older brothers. His parents were Scott and Sonia Jackson. Amber Wright and Seth Jackson began dating in approximately December of 2010, both aged 14 and 15. Their relationship lasted about 3 months before a bitter breakup in March of 2011. Jackson suspected Wright of being unfaithful with 18-year-old Michael Shane Bargo Jr. After the breakup, hostile exchanges erupted on Facebook. Wright began dating Bargo, who believed wrongly that Jackson had abused Wright during their relationship. Bargo reportedly told Jackson he had a bullet with his name on it. Under Bargo's direction, a plan was devised to lure Jackson to his demise. On April 17, 2011, Wright called and texted Jackson claiming she wanted to reconcile. Jackson was suspicious. He texted her saying that if she had him jumped, he would never give her the time of day. Wright responded that she could never do that to him. She just wanted them back together. Jackson went to co-conspirator Charlie K. Ely's home in Summerfield, Marion County, Florida. Upon arrival, Jackson was ambushed by 5 co-conspirators. Michael Shane Bargo Jr., 18. Wright's half-brother Kyle Hooper, 16. Charlie K. Ely, 18. And Justin Soto, 20. Jackson was beaten and struck. He tried to escape the house. Bargo ultimately took his life with a firearm. Wright had asked Bargo earlier if it was time to start a fire in the fire pit. The fire had been started before Jackson even arrived. Jackson's remains were placed in a sleeping bag, burned in the fire pit, and the ashes were loaded into 5-gallon paint cans and dumped in a rock quarry by Wright's stepfather, James Havens, 37. The house was cleaned with bleach. Sonia Jackson reported her son missing on April 18, 2011. Hooper was the first to confess, telling his mother while watching a news report about Jackson's disappearance. Wright, Hooper, and Ely were later placed in a holding cell where they discussed the crime. Hooper said Jackson deserved what happened to him. All 6 suspects were arrested by April 20, 2011. How does a teenage romance devolve into something this calculated, this coordinated, this final? Wright, 15 at the time, was charged with first-degree murder and tried as an adult. Her first trial in June of 2012 resulted in a guilty verdict. She was initially sentenced to life without parole. However, the Florida 5th District Court of Appeal reversed her conviction in May of 2014, ruling that police failed to properly advise Wright of her Miranda rights during interrogation. Specifically, a third interview was improperly integrated with a prior unwarned custodial interrogation. At her retrial in January of 2016, Wright was again found guilty of first-degree murder after roughly 2 hours of jury deliberation. Circuit Judge Anthony Tatti stated that he had not seen or heard anything more despicable than what led to Seth Jackson's death. On February 23, 2016, Wright was resentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole review after 25 years. This reflected changes in Florida law providing more discretion for juvenile defendants, per the United States Supreme Court's Miller v. Alabama ruling. The co-conspirators received the following sentences. Michael Shane Bargo Jr. received death. His sentence was upheld by the Florida Supreme Court on June 24, 2021, and he is currently on death row. Kyle Hooper received life with parole review after 25 years. Justin Soto received life without parole. Charlie K. Ely received 10 years after pleading to second-degree murder following a successful appeal. She was released in June of 2020. James Havens, the stepfather who disposed of the remains, received up to 30 years as an accessory. As of 2026, Amber Wright, now 30 years old, remains incarcerated at Homestead Correctional Institution in Miami-Dade County, Florida, per Florida Department of Corrections records. Her earliest parole review is projected around 2041. 25 years from her 2016 resentencing. No new appeals or developments have been publicly reported. Wright helped orchestrate an ambush. She made a phone call, sent a text, and waited while others carried out the act. But the next case involves a girlfriend who did not need anyone else. She did not need a weapon. She did not need a plan that spanned days. All she needed was a car, a brick wall, and a decision made in the span of a few seconds. A judge would later call her a literal hell on wheels. Mackenzie Sherilla. At 5:34 in the morning on July 31st, 2022, a surveillance camera captured a black Toyota Camry making a controlled right turn onto Progress Drive in Strongsville, Ohio. 1 minute later, a second camera captured the same car traveling at approximately 100 miles per hour, crossing a T intersection and slamming directly into the brick wall of an industrial building. The driver's foot was still pressing the accelerator when first responders arrived. 2 passengers were pronounced dead at the scene. The driver survived. Dominic Russo was 20 years old. He was Mackenzie Sherilla's boyfriend of approximately 4 years. He was a business owner and a Strongsville High School graduate. Davian Flanagan was 19 years old. He was a mutual friend, an adopted young man who was a school athlete and aspired to become a barber. Both were passengers in Sherilla's car. Sherilla and Russo had been together for about 4 years and had been living together since 2021 in one of the Russo family's properties. The relationship was described as tumultuous, marked by multiple breakups and reconciliations. In the month before the crash, witnesses reported escalating abuse by Sherilla against Russo. A family friend claimed to have witnessed Sherilla screaming that she was going to wreck the car right now while trying to strike Russo. Russo's brother testified that Dominic was considering ending the relationship. On the night of July 30th into the 31st, 2022, Sherilla, Russo, and Flanagan attended a graduation party and then went to a friend's house where they listened to music and smoked marijuana. They left at approximately 5:30 a.m. At 5:34 a.m., CCTV captured Sherilla's 2018 Toyota Camry, making a controlled right turn onto Progress Drive in Strongsville, Ohio. 1 minute later, a second camera captured the car traveling at approximately 100 miles per hour, crossing the T intersection with Alameda Drive and slamming directly into the brick wall of the Plidco building, an industrial structure. The corner of the wall struck the passenger side. A Good Samaritan found the wreckage roughly 45 minutes later. All 3 occupants were unconscious and trapped. Sherilla's foot was still pressing the accelerator when first responders arrived. Russo and Flanagan were pronounced dead at the scene. Sherilla survived with multiple fractures and underwent several surgeries. Police found 6.91 grams of psilocybin mushrooms and a digital scale in Sherilla's possession. The crash initially appeared accidental, but a mechanics expert confirmed the car had no defects. Brakes and pedals were fully operational. The event data recorder, commonly called the black box, revealed that Sherilla's foot was pressed on the accelerator to its full extent, and the brake was never applied in the 4.6 seconds of available pre-crash data. GPS data showed Sherilla had visited the same industrial area 3 days before the crash, interpreted by prosecutors as possible reconnaissance. She claimed in a hospital interrogation that she had blacked out and had no memory. She was not under the influence of alcohol. On-scene paramedic evaluation ruled out stroke, seizure, or other neurological emergency. On November 4th, 2022, Sherilla was arrested upon hospital discharge and charged with 17 crimes, including 2 counts of aggravated murder. What happens in the mind of someone who has 4.6 seconds to press the brake, but never does? Defense attorney James McDonnell chose a bench trial before Judge Nancy Margaret Russo, no relation to the victim. The 4-day trial began August 7, 2023. On August 14, 2023, Judge Russo found Sharilla guilty on 12 counts. 4 counts of murder, 4 counts of felonious assault, 2 counts of aggravated vehicular homicide, 1 count of drug possession, and 1 count of possessing criminal tools. The judge declared that her actions were controlled, methodical, deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. This was not reckless driving. This was murder. She called Sharilla a literal hell on wheels and stated that she had a mission and she executed it with precision. On August 21, 2023, Sharilla received 2 concurrent life sentences with first parole eligibility after 15 years, 1 for each victim. Her driver's license was permanently suspended. Judge Russo noted that she understood the pain in the courtroom, wanted her to impose the harshest sentence, but she did not believe that would be the appropriate sentence, because she believed Mackenzie would not be out in 15 years. The Ohio 8th District Court of Appeals upheld the conviction on September 26, 2024, finding sufficient evidence. A post-conviction relief petition was filed one day, past the deadline due to a leap year miscalculation, and was denied as untimely. A supplemental petition introduced new medical evidence, an affidavit from neurologist Dr. Kamal Chamali, suggesting evidence was consistent with loss of consciousness, but this was also denied. The Ohio Supreme Court declined to hear the appeal. All appeals to date have been denied. As of 2026, Mackenzie Sharilla, now 20 years old, is incarcerated at the Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville, Ohio. Her parole hearing is projected for approximately 2038, 15 years from conviction. Her parents publicly maintain her innocence. Her legal team has indicated they will continue pursuing appellate options. Sharilla's case centered on control. Control of the vehicle, control of the relationship, and control of the outcome. But the next case involves a girlfriend whose control was exercised over months through repeated acts of violence that her boyfriend somehow endured until the day he could not. Zoe Cooper. In the months before August of 2024, a 19-year-old man showed up to his job at a Subway restaurant looking beat up. He confided to his manager that his girlfriend had attacked him. His phone contained a photo of a fresh stab wound on his shoulder and text messages from her saying she was glad she had stabbed him and wished he had died that day. Despite all of this, he stayed. And on August 14, 2024, she made sure he never left. Tadarius Marquise Massey was 19 years old, a graduate of Ocoee High School in Florida. He worked at a Subway restaurant and was from South Apopka, Florida. His family described him as their only child. Massey and Zoe Cooper were boyfriend and girlfriend, though some sources say they were estranged by the time of the incident. They had known each other since high school. The relationship was marked by a documented pattern of domestic violence by Cooper against Massey. In December of 2023, Cooper attacked Massey at Ocoee High School because he would not let her see his phone. A vice principal confirmed Massey reported being previously attacked and stabbed by Cooper. In March of 2024, investigators found a photo on Massey's phone showing a fresh stab wound on his shoulder, along with text messages from Cooper stating that she should have taken his life, that she was glad she stabbed him, and that she wished he had died that day. His Subway manager told investigators Massey would come to work looking beat up and confided that Cooper had attacked him. Cooper also came into the restaurant to silently watch him work. On August 14, 2024, Cooper and Massey were at Cooper's home on Florence Vista Boulevard in the Ocoee area of Orange County, Florida. An argument erupted because Massey refused to let Cooper go through his phone, the same trigger as prior incidents. The argument escalated. Cooper armed herself with a knife. She claimed Massey took the knife and stabbed stuffed animals before she retrieved it and stabbed him. But investigators found no stabbed stuffed animals at the scene. Massey sustained a fatal stab wound to the heart, a wound to his left shoulder, stab marks on his wrist and forearm, a cut on his forehead, and scratches on his neck consistent with manual strangulation. The autopsy also revealed 2 older healed stab wounds near his left shoulder, evidence of prior attacks. Friends who witnessed the couple emerging from the residence said Massey was already wounded. Cooper was reportedly frantic, saying she did not mean to. She drove Massey and his friends to Health Central Hospital, but did not enter the hospital, instead driving back to her residence. Massey was pronounced dead before deputies arrived at approximately 12:32 p.m. Cooper's only visible injury was a bruised eye, deemed by investigators inconsistent with a prolonged fight. Someone has already survived multiple stabbings from the same person. At what point does another attack stop being impulsive and start being inevitable? The day after Massey's death, Cooper posted on Instagram that she did not expect anyone to understand her side of the story and apologized for the pain she caused. 6 days later, she sent a message to Massey's Instagram account with laughing emojis, a message described as mocking. The case was initially unclear. Investigators spent months determining whether it was homicide or self-defense. On November 15, 2024, 3 months after the incident, Zoe Nicole Cooper, 18, was arrested by Texas Southern University Police in Houston, Texas. She was charged with second-degree murder in Orange County, Florida. Days after her arrest in Texas, Cooper was released from custody. Court documents cite the reason as the demanding jurisdiction releasing the hold and declining to extradite. A waiver of extradition, signed by Cooper, gave Florida 14 days to arrange transfer. It appears this window lapsed. The Orange County Sheriff's Office confirmed the case was still active as of December of 2024. As of the most recent available reporting, no trial has occurred. The case appears to remain in pretrial or extradition limbo. No updates from 2025 or 2026 have been located regarding arraignment, trial, or plea. Cooper is charged but not yet tried. Cooper allegedly harmed Massey multiple times before the final incident. But the next case does not involve a girlfriend who personally carried out the act. Instead, it involves a 17-year-old who allegedly set the stage, made the arrangements, and then stood by as someone else pulled the trigger. If you're liking this video and you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. We drop new cases every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Gianna Kistenmacher. During a FaceTime call in June of 2025, a 19-year-old man produced a firearm, pointed it at the camera, and said he would come down there and end someone's life. A 16-year-old boy saw this happen. His girlfriend saw this happen. And yet somehow, arrangements were still made for everyone to meet in person. Within hours, that 16-year-old was gone, and 9 teenagers faced murder charges. Trey Dean Wright was 16 years old, a rising sophomore at Johnsonville High School in Florence County, South Carolina. He was a varsity athlete in football and baseball and aspired to become a military chaplain. His mother, Ashley Lindsay, was a single mother. His grandmother was Catherine Lee. Wright and Gianna Kistenmacher, 17, had been dating for approximately 2 months. Wright told his family dating her felt like a dream come true. His mother said he would bring Kistenmacher around to meet his family because he truly liked her. Kistenmacher was a cheerleader at Atlantic Collegiate Academy in Myrtle Beach. Her father was reportedly a detective. Kistenmacher accused Wright of cheating. An argument escalated over FaceTime and social media between groups in Myrtle Beach, where Kistenmacher lived, and Johnsonville, where Wright lived. During a FaceTime call, 19-year-old Devin Scott Raper from Conway, South Carolina, produced a firearm, pointed it at the camera, and stated that he would come down there and take a life. Despite witnessing this, arrangements were made for an in-person meeting. Wright's mother said her son believed they were meeting for a bare-knuckle fight. On the night of June 24, 2025, at approximately 11:30 p.m., a group from Myrtle Beach, including Kistenmacher, Raper, and several others, traveled roughly an hour to Johnsonville in 2 vehicles. During the drive, Raper and another co-defendant told passengers to turn their cell phones off because they did not want law enforcement to track them. They also said that if they had to, they would do a drive-by. At North First Neck Road, Wright, shirtless and wearing only shorts, approached a white Mazda and began banging on the rear passenger door. Someone inside unlocked it. When Wright opened the door, Raper fired shots at close range, striking Wright twice in the lower chest. Kistenmacher, driving one of the vehicles, fled the scene with Raper and the other passengers. Wright was found lying in the roadway when deputies arrived at approximately 11:40 p.m. He was transported to a hospital and pronounced dead. The incident was captured on cell phone video by at least one of the teens present. After the shooting, Kistenmacher tried to drive to the hospital but had a flat tire. She rode with an aunt to the hospital, where Wright's family unknowingly comforted her. His grandmother recalled that Kistenmacher came to the hospital and that they thought she had nothing to do with it. They were comforting her. How does a 2-month romance lead to a caravan of teenagers driving an hour in the middle of the night with firearms and explicit instructions to avoid being tracked? 9 teenagers were charged in total, all with murder under South Carolina's hand of one is the hand of all legal principle. Raper was charged with murder and weapons possession and held without bond. Kistenmacher was initially charged with accessory before the fact, later upgraded to murder. The allegation stated that she brought Raper to the incident location, knowing that he was armed and that there would be a confrontation for violence likely to lead to death, based on statements made in her presence. She was charged as an adult despite being 17. Kistenmacher was initially denied bond, but was released on bond July 28, 2025, under house arrest with GPS monitoring, a social media ban, and no contact with the victim's family or co-defendants. On July 25, 2025, she entered a proffer or cooperation agreement with prosecutors and has fully cooperated. At a February 12, 2026 hearing, the judge lifted house arrest to allow her to work, with an 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. The social media ban was maintained. Prosecutors argued social media was the reason all of this transpired in the first place. As of April of 2026, no trial date has been set for any defendant. Kistenmacher is out on modified bond and cooperating with the prosecution. Raper remains jailed without bond, with his attorney exploring a possible stand-your-ground motion. No verdict or sentencing has occurred for any of the 9 defendants. Kistenmacher is cooperating with authorities now, but cooperation after the fact does not bring back a 16-year-old boy who thought he was walking into a fistfight. The next case involves even less information than this one. Because the proceedings were sealed, the suspect was never named, and the only certainty is that a 19-year-old young man is gone. The murder of Deshaun Cotton. On July 16, 2025, police in Toledo, Ohio, responded to a call about a person who had been stabbed at a home on the 6,000 block of Morningside Drive. They found a 19-year-old man outside the home suffering from a stab wound. He was transported to a hospital, where he later passed away. His 17-year-old girlfriend was taken into custody at the scene. Because she was a juvenile, her identity was never publicly released. And because the case remained in juvenile court, it may never be. Deshaun Cotton, known to friends and family as Fat Fat, was 19 years old. He was born February 1, 2006, and lived in Toledo, Ohio. Cotton's girlfriend was 17 years old at the time. Her identity has not been publicly released because she is a juvenile. Based on the URL of a Toledo Blade article covering her plea, her surname appears to be Perry. Local media followed policy of not naming juvenile suspects. On July 16, 2025, at approximately 7:30 p.m., Toledo police responded to a call about a person stabbed at a home on the 6,000 block of Morningside Drive in West Toledo. Officers found Deshaun Cotton outside the home suffering from a stab wound. They rendered first aid and transported him to St. Vincent Medical Center, where he later passed away. His 17-year-old girlfriend was taken into custody at the scene and charged with murder. An autopsy performed on July 17, 2025, by the Lucas County Coroner's Office revealed a stab wound to the chest, resulting in fatal injury to the heart. The manner of death was ruled a homicide. What happened inside that home on Morningside Drive may never be fully known to the public. The only certainty is the outcome. On July 29, 2025, Lucas County Juvenile Court Judge Amy Stoner ordered a mental health assessment for the teenage suspect. This is a standard step in Ohio's bind-over process for determining whether a juvenile should be transferred to adult court. The case remained in juvenile court. The suspect was not bound over to adult court. On January 14, 2026, approximately 6 months after the incident, the teenager pleaded no contest to a reduced charge of juvenile homicide. The original murder charge was reduced. The full sentencing details are not publicly available due to juvenile court confidentiality. Ohio's juvenile court jurisdiction typically extends to age 21. Because the case stayed within the sealed juvenile court system, specific sentencing details, conditions of confinement or supervision, and the defendant's full name remain confidential. The teenager was approximately 18 at the time of her plea and is presumably under juvenile court supervision, with jurisdiction extending until she turns 21. The lack of information in this case leaves a gap that may never be filled. But the final case on this list is the opposite. It is one of the most documented, most scrutinized, and most adapted teenage murder cases in British history. A 15-year-old girl lured her boyfriend into an ambush, laughed as masked attackers caught up to him, and walked away carrying a bag stained with his blood. His final words, captured by a neighbor who tried to help, were a cry for his mother. Samantha Joseph. In the summer of 2008, a 16-year-old boy in South London told his mother that his new girlfriend was beautiful and that she was going to be his future wife. 6 weeks later, she lured him to a quiet street where her ex-boyfriend and 5 masked attackers were waiting with knives and baseball bats. CCTV footage captured her riding the bus with him to the ambush location, wearing a see-through floral dress, texting his killers their location the entire way. When the attack began, she reportedly laughed. When it was over, she walked away with her ex-boyfriend, carrying his hoodie and a cream-colored handbag stained with blood. Shakilis Townsend was 16 years old, from Deptford in southeast London, England. He was by all accounts an enthusiastic, trusting teenager who fell quickly and deeply. Samantha Joseph was 15 at the time of the crime and 17 at sentencing. She had been dating Shakilis for approximately 6 weeks. But Joseph was still secretly in love with her ex-boyfriend, Danny McLean, 18, who had previously ended things with her. When McLean discovered Joseph had been seeing Shakilis behind his back, he demanded she set up Shak. He wanted her to lure Shakilis into an ambush as punishment and as a demonstration of loyalty to him. On July 3, 2008, Joseph lured Shakilis to Thornton Heath, South London, by telling him they were going to visit her cousin. CCTV footage captured them riding a bus together, Joseph wearing a see-through floral dress, while she secretly texted McLean their location throughout the journey. Upon arrival at a cul-de-sac on Beulah Crescent, McLean and 5 masked gang members armed with knives and baseball bats were waiting. Joseph reportedly laughed as they caught up with Shakilis, then walked away as the attack commenced. Shakilis was beaten with baseball bats and stabbed 6 times. McLean plunged a knife into his chest, raking it across his liver and twisting the blade. A neighbor who heard the commotion chased the gang away and came to Shakilis' aid as he lay dying. His final words were a cry for his mother. He said he did not want to die. After the attack, Joseph was seen walking away with McLean, carrying his hoodie and a cream-colored handbag stained with blood. What kind of loyalty is proven by leading someone who trusts you into a place where they will be harmed fatally? The case was investigated by the Metropolitan Police. CCTV footage, witness testimony, and the number of participants in the attack aided the investigation. All 7 individuals involved were identified and arrested. All 7 defendants were tried at the Old Bailey, the Central Criminal Court, in 2009. All were found guilty of murder and received life sentences with varying minimum terms. Samantha Joseph received life with a minimum of 10 years. Danny McLean received life with a minimum of 15 years. Andre Thompson received a minimum of 14 years, later reduced to 13 years and 3 months on appeal. Andre Johnson Haynes received a minimum of 12 years. Tyrell Ellis received a minimum of 12 years. Don Carlos Ellis received a minimum of 12 years. Michael Akinfenwa received a minimum of 12 years. Judge Richard Hawkins told the defendants that they left Shakilis to die a lonely death, crying for his mother. The case became one of the United Kingdom's most notorious teen murder cases. It was adapted into My Murder, a 2012 BBC Three docudrama starring John Boyega before his Star Wars fame, and Honey Trap, a 2014 independent film starring Jessica Sula and Lucian Laviscount. Samantha Joseph served her 10-year minimum sentence and was released from prison around 2018 to 2019. Upon release, she was deported to her home country of Trinidad. She was not a British citizen. The parole board reportedly assessed her as still posing a threat despite behavioral changes in prison. Danny McLean was approved for release in November of 2022 after spending time in open prison since February of 2020. Andre Thompson was also approved for release around 2022. As of 2026, Samantha Joseph is approximately 33 years old and believed to be living in Trinidad. 8 cases. 8 young men gone. Each one trusted someone who should have protected them, not harmed them. The court records are closed, but the lessons remain open. Thanks for watching. Click here for the next video.